Dr. Versalati here. We're going to talk about aspect in English. But first I have to go over some terms. The first thing we have to do is differentiate between auxiliary verbs and main verbs. Now, auxiliary verbs might be called helping verbs. They help the main verb. Main verbs, however, can stand on their own. They can be the only verb in the clause. Now, the tricky thing, it gets a little more complicated because main verbs can be either lexical verbs, like I love pizza or I have a blue car, where the verb itself carries some meaning. You know what it means when I say I love pizza. You know that the have is, in this sentence, is expressing possession. Now, the other type of main verb is the copula. You might have seen these called linking verbs. They, because they connect the noun phrase in the subject with a noun phrase or an adjectival phrase in the predicate. Examples are, I am a teacher, they are nice. Often the copula is a form of the be verb, but there are some other ones. Now that we have explained the difference between an auxiliary and a main verb, which is a very important thing in this module, let's move on to aspect. We're going to talk about tense and aspect, but let's start with aspect. Aspect is a morphological marking on the verb, and it refers to the way the event is regarded or experienced. And another way of saying it is the way the event is perceived from the speaker's point of view. Now that's a little bit abstract, so let's look at a couple examples. Now in English we have two explicitly marked aspects. The first one is continuous or progressive aspect. And this, when we use this, we're kind of viewing it from the inside as it's unfolding. If we look at the first example, she is crossing the street, if you picture that in your mind, she is crossing the street. Whoever this person is, the person is right now at the event of crossing is still unfolding when you say this. You could also put that in the past tense. She was crossing the street. And even though it's in the past tense, the event is unfolding in that sentence. If you picture it, even if you say she was crossing the street, if you picture it, she would still have to be between the curbs. She couldn't have made it to the other side yet. Now, in contrast, perfect aspect kind of views the event from the outside in retrospect. You could say she has crossed the street. If you picture that, she has crossed the street, that person must have already made it to the other curb. And again, you could put that in past tense. She had crossed the street when I ran into her, or something like that. Again, the crossing part is completed. It's done. The event of crossing has been finished. Let's look at a couple more examples. She is jogging every day. She was jogging every day. You can see that in these examples, we could have present tense or past tense. But what we do have in common, there's a pattern in the form that the progressive aspect takes. Can you find it? It's bolded and underlined, right? So the auxiliary, the helping verb, is a form of the be verb. Is, am, was, were. One of the be forms. Either present or past tense. That's it. It needs to have the be verb. And it has the morphological marking ing. So together, that auxiliary plus that suffix makes the progressive aspect in form. Look at the perfect aspect. What does it have? It has a different auxiliary. It has the have as an auxiliary. And it has an ed or en suffix. An en example would be I have eaten lunch. So it's not the past tense because it can also have we're going to call it the aspect marker, so we don't confuse it, even though sometimes it has the same shape. Okay, so moving on, we we have talked about aspect, and now how are we going to describe tense? Again, tense is a morphological marker. It could be on the main verb, or it could be a special form of the verb, as with the auxiliaries and the copula. Tense is a little bit closer to, it has a closer connection to time, but it's not exactly connected with time, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. And as we already said, both progressive and perfect aspect, both of those can interact with present and past tense. So the question is, which of these are in present tense, which are there in past? Where do we look? We have to look at the auxiliary. Okay, and I'm going to just this slide just gives another example with simple present, where we can see that simple present sometimes can be marked with the subject-verb agreement ending on the verb, and simple past can have this ed past tense marker. But notice if it's simple, there's no auxiliary, right? Okay. Now that we have the review done, let's take a moment to look at how we use aspect. So for this activity, you want to get your tense and aspect handout from the course site. And now that you have gotten that, let's look at what we have here. So what we're going to do is review the uses of aspect in English, and I want you to use your own sentences to demonstrate the correct form of each and put it under each of the different uses. Then we're going to have places where we describe each pattern, right? Linguistics is about finding the patterns in languages. And then we're going to answer some questions too. Okay, so the first use of present progressive is an ongoing situation. So what is something that you're doing right now that you could describe using present progressive? Take a moment and write down your own example. Okay, so I could say something like, I am recording a video. I'm sitting at my desk, right? You could do lots of things. She's eating a salad. You could do whatever's happening right now. You could have that as an example. The second use is a current situation of limited duration. It sort of expresses something temporary. Looking at example 2 here, he is living in an apartment this semester. Do you see how if you just say he lives in an apartment, do you see how we're comparing these two forms? If we say he lives in an apartment with just simple present, it feels more permanent than he is living in an apartment. So it gives a temporary feeling. Go ahead and write your own and continue the video when you're ready. The third use of the present progressive is habitual actions, like I'm jogging, I'm taking the stairs this semester. My example here is I'm writing every Friday. And notice these, oftentimes we use a contraction when we use auxiliaries. What is your habitual action that you could write in present progressive tense? And what is the form of the present progressive? Right? How would you describe actually creating that form? And what do you think this present progressive portrays? What does it express? Are these actual events that happened in real life, or are they non-factual? Are they close? Do you feel close to that event, or is it remote? Does it feel incomplete or complete? Let's look at that pattern. So the pattern of the progressive is going to be a form of the be, and then the verb with that ing progressive suffix. What's the underlying theme or meaning? Well, these are actual things. If I say I'm taking the stairs, that's actual. I'm not talking about something that may happen in the future, even though that may happen again in the future. It could be close or remote depending on if it's present or past tense. So if I say I am taking the stairs, it would be close. And these feel, when we use present progressive, they still feel like the event is unfolding. It's not finished. It hasn't been ended yet. Okay, so let's look at one more use of the present progressive. We can also use it for scheduled situations that have yet to begin. Look at this example. I'm driving to Pittsburgh next weekend. This one's a little bit different because it's not currently happening, right? This is why we say that tense and aspect are not very closely connected to time, because we can see that this hasn't happened yet. This is going to happen probably in the future, but we can't say for sure. What if I break my foot and I end up not driving? So this is a little bit of a different example, but it has that same form, present progressive. Okay, let's move on to past progressive. Past progressive has one time that we use it. It's situations that were in progress in the past. So at 5 p.m., he was drinking some tea. We still have the be verb, right? A form of the be verb. This is going to be in past tense, and then a verb plus ing. We were watching television when the power went out. Again, a be verb. Stop the recording and write your own. Now, past progressive was easy because it has the same form, be plus a verb and ing. And you can see that those would sound more remote to the speaker, right? We were watching TV when the power went out, so the event was in progress. I hadn't concluded my watching of the television. If the power hadn't gone out, that would have continued, but it's a little more remote, right? We use past progressive to express that it isn't happening anymore, even though the event wasn't complete. Now, I want to again warn you that the auxiliary, the perfect has have, and the progressive has be, but remember we have a lexical verb that has the form of have, showing possession, and we have the copula that could be used as a main verb that takes the form of be. And another reminder, where is tense marked when there's aspect? Well, if there's aspect on the verb, we're always going to look at the first auxiliary to find the tense. Okay, and as we said, we're going to not really call the ing a marker of present tense, and we're not going to call the ed or en ending past tense, because when there's aspect, the tense is marked on the auxiliary. And you can see how we with this example, I have known him for a year versus I knew him. So knew is in simple past, so the en or the ed ending is not really a past tense marker. Okay, that is the talk about aspect part 1. Wait for aspect part 2 where we talk about perfect.